friend. And hey yourself! Dude, do you have any idea what's about to go down right now? Let me tell you. That's an LT4 from Chevrolet Performance. Do you have any idea what that means? That means 450-ish pound-feet of torque at 1500 RPM. Over 500 pound-feet of torque at 2000 RPM. And a glorious, world-beating 650 pound-feet of torque and 650 horsepower at full song. And I'm going to stuff it in my 1967 Chevrolet C10 for the ultimate mashup of technology and stupidity. Because that truck was built by mini truckers. That truck back there has 22-inch wheels, air suspension, a body drop, independent rear suspension. It's retarded. And I don't care. When I bought that truck from a farmer up in Napa, it was a 327, 3-speed granny shift, wooden bed floor, short bed, small window Chevy truck. And it was trashed. The engine had a broken piston in it. Remarkably, it was still running. And the bed floor was shot, the rockers were shot, the cab corners. We threw away everything except for the bed, the cab, and the front fenders. Everything else in the garbage. And then we built our own tube chassis, independent rear suspension, airbags. We put an IRS out of a Ford Expedition in there. In the end, this truck laid flat on the ground, had 14 inches of suspension travel, and floated down the highway. And it was powered by an LS2 and a 4L60 trans. I built that truck with my friends about 8 years ago when I lived in California and when I worked for Sport Truck Magazine. And long story short, got laid off, got married, a lot of life changes happening, lost my mind a little bit, and decided to sell it. So I sold it to my buddy Justin, who owns Scott's Hot Rods in Oxnard, California. And at the time, the truck was sitting in his shop because they were doing some sheet metal mods to it. They were building inner fenders, they shaved the cowl, what else? Took the peak off the back of the cab, like all kinds of cool stuff. And I thought, you know what? This truck is rad, it deserves to be finished. If anyone can finish it, Justin can. So he took possession of the truck, and then last summer, during a Hot Rod Power Tour, I ran into him. And I said, hey, whatever happened to that truck? And he's like, dude, it hasn't moved. It's been sitting under a car cover since the day you dropped it off. I thought, holy hell, I want this truck back. Because this is probably the coolest thing I've ever built. It's the most extensive build I've ever been a part of. So I just bought the truck back from Justin nearly a decade later, minus engine and transmission. So when Chevrolet released the new Stingray, it also gave us a brand new small block Chevy, Gen 5 to be exact. And this is all aluminum, direct injected. In the past, I've said this is a derivative or based off of the LS architecture. And you all flipped out on me for saying that, but let's be honest here. Yes, not a single bolt on this will be found on the LS, but it's still a deep skirt block, canted valve cylinder heads, and frankly, without the development of the LS, Chevrolet doesn't end up here. So, yeah, I'm wrong, it's not an LS, but you had to have the LS before you could have this. And you had to have the LT1 before you could have the LT4. The engine is very complete, right down to the water pump, but it's missing a few things. You don't have an alternator, you don't have a power steering pump, there's no ECM here, fuel system, all the things you need to really make this thing tick does not come in this engine package. And there are two packages you can get. There's a dry sump and a wet sump version of this engine. Now I went the dry sump route because A, I'm a glutton for punishment, and I like the difficulty of having to install a dry sump system. And B, I'm also a big fan of the oil control that you get with a dry sump system. If you're going to go around corners, and if you're going to be at sustained high RPM for a long time, you really don't want your crankshaft whipping through a bunch of oil and aerating it. That leads to oil control problems and issues you just don't want to deal with. So although Chevrolet Performance offers a wet sump version of this engine, and I'm sure it's fine for most applications, I plan on beating my truck like it owes me money, so dry sump. And this adds, I think, about $750 to the price tag. MSRP on this particular engine is a little over 15 grand, and you're probably going, whoa, 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 15 grand, that's a lot of money. But it's really not. If you look at the cost of assembling your own 650 horsepower engine, supercharged, and you want it to last and you want some sort of warranty, that's not too bad. And if you look at the cost of an LT1, that's 11 grand. So for another 4 grand, you're getting a supercharger and over 200 more horsepower. Now this is the exact same LT4 you're going to find in a Z06 Corvette made from 2015 on up, which means this has cylinder deactivation, direct injection, variable cam timing, has all of those awesome attributes that you find in a production engine. Now, Chevrolet Performance's ECM is a little different. This engine is not going to have cylinder deactivation operating. The parts are inside to make it work, but because Chevrolet Performance doesn't know how heavy my truck is or which sensors I have or what gears are in the back end of this thing, it really can't send this out into the world with cylinder deactivation turned on and functioning. It'll never work. It's a wonderful mod, at part throttle it drops 4 cylinders to save fuel economy, but during startup, during idling at wide open throttle, moderate throttle, you have a V8 running. Would be wonderful to take advantage of that in this truck, but alright, I'm going to give up a few miles per gallon here. What I'm not going to give up is variable cam timing. That functions in here. That ECM will control the phasing between the camshaft, the crankshaft, and the pistons to make maximum power at all throttle positions and all loads. Okay, gearheads, here is Chevrolet Performance's LT4 crate engine control system. And it is a system. It's got almost everything you need to make this engine run. It includes not only the ECM and a drive-by-wire throttle pedal, but also a power module for a fuel pump. Now, you need a specific style of fuel pump. It needs to not only supply 65.5 gallons per hour at 58 psi, but it needs to be designed to be pulse width modulated. The fuel system for the LT4 is designed to be returnless, and like I said, very specific. We'll go over the fuel pump later when we actually plumb the fuel system. But for now, you need to know that massive wiring harness is not that scary. 95% of it plugs in. Very little wiring to do here. And the system also includes a pair of O2 sensors and bungs, which will need to weld it to the exhaust system, and an array of other sensors like coolant temp, air inlet temp, and mass airflow. So there you have it. That's going to make the engine run, and it's really not that daunting. Trust me. I'll show you in another video. This is a custom installation. There aren't a lot of bagged, body dropped, home-built chassis C10s out there, and Chevrolet is aware of this, so it's not like they made engine mounts and all the other things I need to put this in, but they do offer several key things for this engine to make life easier. It's going to show up with a flex plate for automatic transmission, which I'm not using, but Chevrolet Performance offers a 6-speed manual Tremec gearbox and an installation kit that includes the right clutch, the right bell housing, the right shifter, all packaged neatly to go together. You'll note that these are center dump manifolds. They point straight down, and they're really not going to fit in my chassis. So I went ahead and got what they call their truck manifolds, which will swoop behind. Makes a nice turn here. They're not just running straight down into the log here, so these will work pretty well. They're cast iron, so they're heavier, but they also retain heat better, less likely to warp, that sort of thing, so I'm looking at the positives. Plus, they've also got bungs for a set of factory heat shields that can go on here, just like these ones. There she is. Bed's off, hood's off, and I'm ready to start doing a motor swap. My plan here is to take off the front clip, and then I'm actually going to take the cab off of the truck, because that'll just make installing the engine, building new motor mounts, and possibly a trans mount that much easier, getting the alignment and everything done. And right now there's no wiring in the truck, there's no plumbing. It's basically 4 cab mount bolts
and then the steering shaft coming out of the firewall. That's all that's stopping the cab from coming off. And then I need to remove that last inner fender and unbolt the front clip. So that's my plan. But here's your first look, I guess, at the underpinnings of the truck, at least the front end. That is a Scott's Hot Rods front cross member and lower control arms. We made new upper control arms. Mike Kim and I made those. And those have uniballs or spherical bearings, depending on who you are, what you like to call them. And we use those because those will give you a lot more rate of angle change than a standard ball joint will. And without braking. That's the stuff you commonly find on off-road trucks. It's got Wilwood disc brakes on there, which are nice. Another set of Fox reservoir shocks, which are overkill and not necessary, but what the hell. They're there, we'll use them. Scott's Hot Rods also replaced the entire firewall. That's not just shaved, they replaced the whole thing. And when you see the inside of the truck, you'll see why we did it. Not only does it give you more clearance to the tire, but we also extended it downward, which gives about 4 more inches of leg room in the cab, which for me, I'm 6'1", and with long legs, that is probably one of the best parts about this truck. Is it's a lot less cramped than a traditional 67 to 72 C10. And I dig the inner fenders they made because they bolt in place and they do keep out the dirt, which is nice. When I said this truck hasn't moved in 8 years or more, I was serious. Watch this. This is what 8 years of dust on top of black spray paint looks like. Filthy. We'll get her cleaned up though. We are going to weigh this thing. And note, I am using the tare function, because yes, I know how that works. I know some of you during the nitrous bottle filling the video thought I was a tard. I'm not. I was just being lazy. Alright. Let's see. She's wiggling. Scale says she's stable. 461 pounds. That's a 650 horsepower motor that weighs 461 pounds. Let's put that into perspective. The last all aluminum big block Chevy I built weighed about 550 pounds. The last tall deck, iron block, aluminum head, big block Chevy with an intercooler and a roots blower and 2 carbs, weighed over 800 pounds. So you're talking really good power out of something that weighs hardly anything.
T56 Magnum transmission installation kit. It's all right here. Contains components made in Canada with imported parts from Mexico and Australia. It's global. Even the bell housing is aluminum. And this is from Tremec as well. So you know it works. This must be the hydraulic throwout bearing. Yeah. Alright, step 1. Install the manual transmission flywheel using 6 bolts. 11569956. 11569956. There we go. And these already have thread locking compound on them, which is nice. Hey, want to help?
Yeah.
Seat that on there. Oh, there's this. So these go into oil.
Really?
So when we pull these out, it's going to leak, which is going to suck.
Yeah.
So I need to throw rags down here, and then...
I guess you learned this the hard way.
Yeah, remember the Roadkill jet boat engine swap?
Yeah.
Yeah, LS motor. Learned that the hard way. By the end of that shoot, which is only a couple hours long, the whole bilge of that boat was full of motor oil.
Oh, that sounds awful.
So here's a tip for you. LT4. Bolts in the back of the crank flange. Those go right into the oil. So when you remove the flex plate that comes with the engine, it's going to make a mess. So we're going to wait a little while. And when we install our new flywheel, we'll be sure to put sealant or thread locking compound on the threads. Mess. Shall we? You ever kick the hoist?
Huh?
Kick the hoist down. You gotta use your foot there.
Trying to line up the trans mount?
Yeah, if we can.
Pretty close. It's gonna change a little as it drops. Good. Moving fast.
It got speedier.
Alright, you're gonna have to go back forward with it.
Hoist. Make it. I'm gonna drop this just a little bit. This is a tight squeeze. The heater hoses are going to be aimed directly at my really cool shock hoop. That's going to be an issue. The motor mounts on the LT are not in the same place as the LS because my motor mounts are way too far back. I'm going to have to move those. But we've got plenty of clearance to the cross member. That's a Ford Thunderbird steering rack. Plenty of clearance to that, in case you were wondering what that was. And it looks like the back of the intake sticks out further than it would on an LS. And this is for the direct injection stuff. So we have to shove the motor a little further forward. The firewall is essentially here. So I think we're going to end up moving the motor forward a little bit to clear the firewall, because I don't want to rebuild that firewall again. But the old trans mount looks like it's going to work. Yeah, this is going to be alright. Motor and trans is in. Or dangling at least. It's not actually in. And the next time I check in with you, I'll build motor mounts. I'll finish the trans mount. I'll get a drive shaft in there. And I think I'm going to be able to rework the downpipes to connect to the new manifolds that I got from Chevrolet Performance. And then we'll start a list. Start knocking things off of it. Getting closer and closer to driving this thing again. See you next time. Okay, it's done. Let's try again. Are you ready for this? I don't think you are. Let's wait. How about now? Okay, I'm ready. That's a Chevrolet Performance LT4. That is my wife coming down the stairs. I can't get shit done in this garage. And there goes the vacuum cleaner again. I'm not getting much done, you might as well come in here. Camera's on. Love you. Love you. Maybe we'll wait a little longer. I'll just turn this off.